On October 31st, 2025, a significant announcement came from the United States government. It officially designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, or CPC, for severe violations of religious freedom. The decision, announced by President Donald Trump, places Nigeria on a list of countries engaging in or tolerating egregious abuses. It signals that the problems are too serious to ignore any longer. The move followed years of reports and advocacy from international bodies and human rights groups. The U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has recommended Nigeria for CPC status every year since 2009. In 2025, U.S. CRF again included Nigeria alongside Afghanistan and India as deserving designation. Consistent pressure from the Commission and members of Congress culminated in the administration's action. The timing followed particularly brutal attacks in Plateau and Taraba states in October. Reports described targeted assaults on predominantly Christian communities, dozens killed, homes and farmland burned, mass displacement, kidnappings of clergy and community leaders, and pervasive fear intensified global attention. These incidents likely added urgency in Washington, echoing years of activist warnings. Advocacy groups cite staggering numbers. While exact figures are debated, the scale of violence is undeniable. For many, the designation is a step toward accountability and a recognition of suffering. It brings U.S. diplomatic weight to bear, opening avenues for pressure and protective action. The term country of particular concern is a formal designation under the U.S. International Religious Freedom Act of 1998. It is not applied lightly, reserved for severe, systematic, ongoing violations. A state can be culpable for engaging in violations or tolerating them through inaction. The problems are systematic, ongoing, and egregious. Violations can include torture, prolonged detention without charge, disappearances, and denials of life and liberty. A CPC designation is the most serious U.S. determination on religious freedom. It triggers options: diplomatic measures, sanctions, export restrictions, limits on assistance, or a negotiated remedy. The law requires the president to take one or more specific steps, calibrated in severity. Actions range from private or public denunciations to economic penalties. Restrictions can include exports and certain financial assistance. Alternatively, parties can negotiate binding commitments to improve conditions. The aim is not simply punitive, it's to encourage change and end persecution. Responsibility considers not only non-state violence, but the state's duty to protect and prevent impunity. If a government fails to take meaningful steps to safeguard citizens, it can be held accountable. This is central to arguments about Nigeria raised by critics and advocates alike. The crisis is a complex web. No single cause explains it. Islamist terrorist groups, Boko Haram and ISWAP, have waged a brutal insurgency for over a decade. Their violence spans large swathes of the north. They attack Muslims and Christians, while specifically targeting Christians, Western-style education, and dissenters. Tactics include massacres, bombings of churches and mosques, and widespread kidnappings for ransom. The result is constant fear and instability. Another driver: farmer-herder clashes, especially across the Middle Belt. Competition over land and water, worsened by climate pressures and population growth. Identities overlay the conflict, predominantly Fulani Muslim herders and many Christian farming communities. Attacks are often framed in religious terms: churches burned and pastors targeted. Many communities feel abandoned. Security often arrives late, if at all. Activists allege bias or infiltration in security ranks, eroding trust in the state. When protection fails, self-defense militias arise, fueling cycles of retaliation. A dual legal system in 12 northern states adds tension. Blasphemy laws have drawn international condemnation. Critics, including Senator Ted Cruz, argue these practices violate fundamental rights. The human cost is immense and concentrated in specific places. Watchdogs report that Christian communities bear a disproportionate share of lethal violence, particularly in the Middle Belt and northern states. Of Christians reported killed for their faith globally, a vast majority were in Nigeria. Attacks often target predominantly Christian villages, burning homes, crops, and churches to displace residents. The aim is to alter the religious and ethnic makeup of entire regions. Farmers are among the most vulnerable. Violence destroys livelihoods and fuels food insecurity. Many are pushed into crowded displacement camps with uncertain futures. Religious leaders and congregations are direct targets. Priests, pastors, and other clergy kidnapped or killed. Kidnappings generate ransom and terrorize communities, decapitating leadership. Worshippers no longer feel safe. Some congregations abandon services or meet in secret. Muslims are also major victims. Boko Haram and ISWAP attack mosques and kill Muslim leaders who oppose them. Extremists brand mainstream Muslims as infidels for rejecting rigid ideologies. While the CPC focuses on religious persecution, especially of Christians, officials note the violence is multifaceted. Countless Muslims have lost lives, homes, and security to the same terror campaigns. The suffering spans communities, even as patterns of targeting remain clear. The Nigerian government pushes back against a purely religious narrative. They argue conflicts are driven by ethnic rivalries, land and water disputes, and rampant criminality. From this perspective, religion is often a secondary element exploited to mobilize divisions. Officials note Boko Haram has killed many Muslims. Evidence, they say, this is not a simple religious war. Some international observers, including Vatican officials, call the crisis more social than religious. They emphasize poverty, unemployment, desertification, and governance deficits as core drivers. Proposed solutions focus on development, resource management, and inter-communal dialogue. Many advocates strongly disagree, arguing social factors do not negate a clear religious dimension. They point to explicit ideologies of Boko Haram and ISWAP and patterns of anti-Christian targeting. They cite attacks by Fulani militias selectively targeting Christian villages, burning churches, and killing pastors. To these groups, minimizing religious motivation fails victims. The U.S. designation prioritizes religious freedom concerns. It aligns with U.S.-based NGOs and certain members of Congress. Senator Ted Cruz's proposed 2025 act frames Christians as being targeted and executed for their faith. Even with mixed roots, the conflict's expression is deeply intertwined with religious identity, warranting a forceful response. The CPC designation is a catalyst for action, not an endpoint. First, dramatically improve security for all vulnerable communities. Deploy forces effectively in rural areas and ensure swift response to attacks. Resource and train local police to maintain order impartially. Protect all civilians regardless of faith or ethnicity to rebuild trust. Second, deliver justice and accountability. End impunity for mass atrocities. Prosecute terrorists, militias, and complicit security officials in fair, transparent trials. International partners can support with forensics and investigative assistance to build strong cases. Third, address roots of conflict. Equitable land and water policy, modern livestock practices, mapped grazing routes. Invest in climate-resilient agriculture and community peace initiatives. Empower religious and community leaders to resolve disputes before they escalate. International engagement should prioritize partnership over isolation. Sanctions remain a tool, not the goal. Provide humanitarian aid, fund interfaith reconciliation, and strengthen the justice system. The CPC designation is a loud alarm, demanding coordinated action by government, citizens, and partners. With resolve and cooperation, Nigeria can move from crisis toward lasting peace and security for all. Thank you for watching. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe.